Welcome back to Exotic Car Play Place, everybody. Thanks for joining in again. Today we are going to focus in on two really great cars. Now, in today's day and age of ever-expanding sea of Fisher-Price toys that are purely electric, or other cars that are just getting very large and heavy due to restrictions and safety devices built on board, it is refreshing to know that there are a few small pockets of specialized performance cars that really do go back to the roots. Cars that really touch the souls and the hearts of drivers and car enthusiasts like myself and like you guys. So we're going to focus in on two little hot rods, one from the BMW world and another one from Audi. So let's get into it now. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. And so in this world of ever-evolving automotive technology, I can't help to think what 10 years, 20 years down the road looks like. It frightens me because I fear that we'll lose touch with a lot of the real performance cars that we grip on today for dear life because their fun factor. After all, remember, life's too short to drive boring cars. So today we have two great cars. We're going to talk about the Audi TT RS and the BMW M2 Competition. We're going to do some direct comparisons and explain why these two great new cars are truly savages in a world of constant evolving fully autonomous automobiles and relaxed drives. These two cars really do bring the life and spirit of driving back to the equation. And we're going to do some comparisons directly and explain at the very end how I feel about both of them, as well as which one I think is possibly the better car. So comparing coupes, these two cars actually have a lot more in common than a lot of people give them credit for. As a matter of fact, a lot of times when people are comparing the M2 Competition, they're comparing it with the other BMW M cars or possibly bigger versions of other manufacturers. But the reality is, it is actually a lot closer to the TT RS, being that they're both very similarly sized, they both have similar horsepower, and quite frankly, they're both coupes with back seats. So they're a very comparable vehicle. Now, some key differences between the BMW M2 Competition is it has a 3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder engine that produces about 405 horsepower, which happens to be stolen directly from the M4 and just slightly detuned. Whereas the Audi has a 5-cylinder turbo engine that produces almost 400 horsepower. What's remarkable is the Audi actually has significant less weight to haul around at about 3,300 pounds versus BMW's 3,600 pounds. It's like hauling a motorcycle in the trunk. Now, of course, similar horsepower, but the fact is, extra weight means that the BMW is slightly less responsive in the acceleration game. Now, that's not to say it is sluggish, because the M2 Competition is almost an unwieldy animal. When you get on full throttle in first, second gears, particularly, and even more so in wet conditions, the car can be an absolute maniac. Whoa! Wow, that was quick! Whereas the Audi is totally different. With all-wheel drive, the famous Quattro all-wheel drive system by Audi, the car is planted, it grips and goes, and it is extremely fast out of the hole. How fast, in fact? Let's talk about acceleration times. The Audi TT RS has a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 3.7 seconds. That's blistering time. Whoa! Versus the M2 Competition time of 4.2. So there's two things working against the BMW here. Number one is the weight, and number two is the rear-wheel drive. And I can attest to you, getting out of the hole under full acceleration launches in the BMW M2 Competition is challenging because there is significant wheel spin. And it's tough to regulate to get the maximum launch. While you're on the fly, that becomes a different story. The TT still continues to accelerate very hard, but that's where the BMW starts to make a little bit of ground, is it's got the legs to run. The BMW hits the quarter-mile trap in 13.1 seconds versus Audi's 12.8. So it's quite evident that the Audi gets to the quarter-mile quicker. The trap speed is actually identical at 118 miles per hour for both cars. Essentially, with the Quattro all-wheel drive, it launches harder out of the hole, plus its reduced weight gets it off the line much quicker. But BMW's legs tend to push it. Even though it's only got a marginal increase in power and torque, it's able to catch up, possibly making some ground. And both of these cars have what it takes in the braking department to knock themselves from 70 miles an hour down to 0 in under 155 feet. Where one car rises ahead of the other one is the M2 Competition actually has a far superior handling, and that's where the BMWs are actually legendary in the handling department. They can change directions on a dime. The M2 Competition is extremely agile, quick turn in, and does everything you want it to when you want it to. Whereas the TT RS sort of takes that extra moment in time to change directions. It doesn't have the quick steer in. Also with the all-wheel drive system, it's great for general traction in high-speed corners, but its changing of directions doesn't work very well. Also, don't forget, in general, the TT chassis struggle with changing directions. There were safety hazards a few years ago with the concept and the chassis design that would create a severe snap oversteer condition, and they were very, very dangerous. Now, there were some changes they made to the spoiler and some other parts to sort of dial that in a bit and reduce the effect. However, because of the wheelbase and the overall chassis design, they are not as capable in the handling department as an M2 Competition would be. Now, another thing to talk about, if it's not important to you, that's fine. Many people love a manual transmission, and you can only get that in the M2 Competition. Whereas you can get a dual clutch transmission as well in either the Audi TT RS or the BMW M2 Competition. So at that point, that's a wash. Price and value. Well, value for the money, I would say, goes to the Audi for the simple fact that it is actually all-wheel drive, which makes more sense for more people due to different driving conditions. It'll allow you to drive in winter and bad road conditions, whereas the M2 Competition becomes a lot more track-focused. Now with that, the prices are quite different. The BMW M2 Competition comes in at a starting price of $72,000 Canadian funds, far less on the US side of the border, and it comes in at $76,000 for the Audi TT. So let's talk about the cosmetics of these cars. There's no question in my mind, you look around the exterior of the car, and other than the wing that is optional, like the car that I have here in front of me, where you can get a carbon fiber wing, the M2 Competition is in fact a very, very basic looking design. It's form follows function, and it's all about the racing performance. But the styling and the design of the car is in fact commensurate of the price point. Whereas the TT RS is a little bit more dressed up. They've got more aggressive spoilers on the front, they've got the wing on the back, and overall design and the wheel packaging, it looks a little bit stepped up from the base models. It actually looks very, very crisp. Move to the inside of the car, and the Audi TT RS also has an advantage over the BMW in the overall quality of finishing. Whereas the BMW still uses a fair amount of plastic. Look at the bottom of the door panels, for example. The door pockets are covered in plastic, and there's a very, very Spartan dressed-down feel to the M2 Competition that you don't necessarily get in the TT RS. And a big part of that is the TT RS has the digital display, it has the upgraded steering wheel, it actually just looks really boned up. Whereas the M2 Competition is really more track focused, and again, as I said, a simpler overall design. A lot of people are always curious, how reliable is that car? So we talk about the dependability between these two vehicles. Now there's not a whole lot to report other than the fact that I can tell you at this point, if you leave both of the vehicles stock, the TT RS so far is showing to be an extremely reliable car. There's not a lot of reports of any chronic issues. Sure, there's cases where you can find on the internet where somebody blew up his engine, but often it was overboosted and highly modified. There's also cases in the BMW world where there was issues as well too. But the key, what I'm trying to say here is, the TT RS is very reliable. The BMW M2 Competition is also fairly reliable, but there is something to consider. The S55 engine, which is that twin-turbo 3-liter 6-cylinder engine that we spoke of earlier, shared with the M3, M4, also shares the same guts, which is the crank hub issue that could potentially arise with these cars. The percentage of this occurring is quite low, but the reality is it's starting to happen. It's a 2 or 3 piece part that comes apart at the seams, and if that happens, it's generally a catastrophic engine failure. That in itself, even though it's in low numbers, is a concern for some people. Get past that, the cars are very, very similar, and both perform very well to a high level with relatively decent reliability. Now, another thing that people are curious about is, how does the car sound? Let's give you an example of the Beamer and the Audi. So really, they do just come down to a personal preference. One does have more of a guttural, lower, deeper tone and sounds a little bit more of a V10 sound to it, whereas the other one's just a howler. So it's your personal choice. So then as a summary, which car would I actually buy? I got to spend a whole lot of time behind this wheel of each one of these cars, and I was thoroughly impressed with both cars. I did walk-arounds, I listened, I did startups, hard acceleration runs. Whoa! And it moves good too. I ran these cars through the corners. I really got to spend time and really look at the gadgets and play around in these cars, and I was very, very much impressed with both cars. Now, aside from the price, which really essentially is kind of a wash, we're only talking about a handful of thousands of dollars between the two of them, the factor really comes down to what I preferred. Which car did I like better? Well, I would honestly tell you, for general driving around the street, you got to commute to work and then have some freeway on-ramp blasts and just enjoy the car from day to day, have a performance, a sports car that you could really use every day. There's no question in my mind the Audi would fit that bill. It is a far more usable car. It's usable in poor road conditions with the all-wheel drive system. The digital display is nice. The interior is actually a little bit cleaner than the BMW. And overall, the car had a bit more feel of quality. However, if I wanted that maniac machine and I wanted to go out to the track regularly, maybe I get into a club that did a lot of autocrossing, or I was able to take the car out to the track from time to time, without question, the BMW is the car you want. Let's do that again, all right? Extreme track or extreme street? I would say that's a very, very difficult discussion, everybody. And at this time, I really can't make up my mind. So please, drop a line below. I really want to hear what you guys think. Which is the better car? Forget about nicknames. Forget about the fact that some cars are more loved and some are more hated. Can you drop a line? Let me know which car you think is actually the better car. All right. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that link over here for my full review on the M2 Competition and the link over here for my Audi TT RS review. You're going to love either one. And at the very least, hit the subscribe button, and I really hope to see you guys on the next one. Catch you real soon. Bye-bye.